I was 60 when an accident put me in a coma for a year. Doctors told my family I couldn't hear. They laughed at me, counted my days, and schemed about the money as if I were already gone. I heard every cruel word. When I opened my eyes, I said nothing. Then I started to move. My name is Thomas Hale. I was 60 years old when a truck ran a red light and crushed my car. I woke up months later, or maybe I never really woke up, just drifted somewhere between noise and silence. I came up in pieces, aware after a few months, moving by mid-year and fully myself around the year mark. I could not move, could not speak, but I could hear. The doctor said I might never come back. They told my family to prepare. My son, Daniel, nodded, his hand on my shoulder. His wife, Melissa, cried the loudest, and I wanted to comfort her. I thought she meant it. I was wrong. The first time I heard their laughter, I thought I imagined it. I remember the beeping of the machines, the smell of bleach, and Melissa's voice, sharp but playful. Well, at least we'll have some space now. That old house could finally be modernized. Daniel didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Dad always said the place was too big." Maybe this is what he'd want. They were standing so close I could feel Melissa's perfume, sweet, almost metallic. I wanted to scream, to tell them I was there, but nothing came out. Days passed. Nurses changed shifts, doctors made rounds, and my family kept visiting. Their kindness felt thin, like plastic. Sometimes they brought flowers, sometimes papers to sign. "For the insurance," Daniel whispered once, guiding a pen into my stiff hand. I remember the scrape of pen against paper. I didn't know what I was signing, but I remembered the sound. My sister Helen came every Sunday. She sat by my bed reading Psalms, her voice steady. "You'll wake up when you're ready, Tommy," she said once. I believed her. She was the only one who spoke as if I were still in the room. One evening I heard Daniel on the phone in the hallway. His voice carried through the door. "We'll sell the workshop. Tools aren't worth much, but the land, the land's valuable." He paused. He wouldn't mind. "He's not coming back." I would have cried if my body had allowed it. Instead, I memorized every word, every tone, every betrayal. Time became a slow grind. Machines hummed, nights and mornings blurred. But I kept listening, collecting their words like stones in a pocket, each one heavier than the last. Then came the day they thought I was asleep. A nurse adjusted my drip, left, and the room fell silent except for their voices. Melissa said, "If the doctors are right, he can't hear a thing." "Just a body keeping the bed warm," Daniel chuckled. "Let's be practical, Mel. We can't afford to keep waiting. The house, the accounts, it's what he'd want us to use." That was the first time I truly hated my own blood. A small tear slipped down my cheek. I felt it. So did Melissa. She froze. "Daniel, did you see that?" He glanced, shrugged. "Just reflex." But I wasn't reflex. I was rage learning how to breathe again. When they left that night, I began to move one finger at a time. It was a few weeks later when Helen came again. She sat by my bed, brushed my hand, and told me about her garden. I could smell the lilacs from her scarf. "You used to say patience grows roots," she whispered. "Maybe you're just growing new ones now." Her voice was calm, but the room changed when Daniel walked in. His tone lowered. "Hey, Aunt Helen, you shouldn't get your hopes up." Helen straightened. "Hope's all he's got." He forced a laugh. "Doctors said he won't wake." "We need to plan. The house, his pension, all that stuff needs managing." I wanted to tell her not to leave, but she kissed my forehead, whispered, "You hold on, Tommy," and went home. When the door closed, Daniel sighed. "She means well, but she's not practical." Melissa leaned over my bed. "The place will be too much to manage, Dan. We can't wait forever. You said yourself, Dad wouldn't want to suffer. He nodded, rubbing his chin. Maybe we should list it early. If he, you know, my pulse monitor spiked. They both looked up, startled. Melissa leaned close, smiling. It's okay, Dad. You can rest. We'll take care of everything. I felt her hand on mine. Soft, cold, rehearsed. I wanted to pull away but couldn't. The idea of her selling my land, my workshop, my memories, it burned deeper than any pain I'd ever known. That night a nurse whispered to another, He's stable, but the family's already planning next steps. Poor man, I wasn't poor. Not yet. I made myself remember the nurse's name, the shift time, the details. If I lived, I'd find every record, every file. A month later, the doctors tried lowering my sedation. The world brightened for hours at a time. I started catching their footsteps before they entered. I counted them by sound. Helen's light steps, Melissa's sharp heels, Daniel's slow, heavy ones. Each visit peeled something off me. Trust, love, belief. One morning I heard Melissa on a call. If the old man passes, the payout covers the mortgage and the car. I checked the numbers. We'll be fine. I realized then it wasn't grief. They were impatient. My survival was an inconvenience. Daniel came in later, holding my wrist to check the pulse like a stranger. Hang in there, Dad, he said. His eyes didn't match his voice. The door closed behind him. I listened to the echo fade. The machines beeped steady, like a metronome keeping time with my thoughts. They thought I was a story ending. I was memorizing the plot. The next time they spoke about my death, I was listening closer than ever. They weren't prepared for it. My revenge would hit them harder than they could have expected. Before we continue with the story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. It was late one night when I understood just how deep their greed ran. The hospital was quiet. The hallway lights dimmed to a soft hum, like the world itself had stepped outside for air. I could hear every sound, the monitor, the oxygen, the faint tap of Melissa's shoes. They thought I was sleeping. Daniel spoke first, voice hushed but steady. If he makes it through another month, the bills will drain everything. We might as well get ahead of it. The insurance papers need both our signatures. Melissa sighed. And the house? I talked to the realtor. She said she could list it even before probate, as long as we provide medical proof he's not coming back. I felt the words like a slap. Not coming back. Melissa gave a small laugh. You're sure about this? It feels wrong. Daniel hesitated. It's practical. He wouldn't want us drowning in hospital debt. She leaned closer to him. Debt? We're fine. You just want the money, Dan. His tone turned sharp. We've earned it. All those years he spent on that house, hoarding tools, saving every cent like a dragon. What for? He barely left anything to enjoy. He was wrong. I hadn't hoarded. I had built. Every tool, every beam in that workshop carried memory. The bench where my late wife sat while I carved her rocking chair. The saw she teased me for keeping sharp just in case. They weren't stealing money. They were trying to erase us. Melissa chuckled. Fine. Then you deal with the paperwork. I'll handle the cleaning. We can tell the hospital we're preparing the property for when... She didn't finish the sentence. When I die. My pulse raced, loud enough that the monitor started to beep faster. They both froze. Daniel's voice broke through. He's reacting. Should we call someone? Melissa peered down at me. No, just nerves. It happens I forced every ounce of will into stillness. Let them think I was fading. Let them believe it. Every second they talked, they gave me another reason to fight. After they left, the nurse came in and checked the equipment. Don't worry, Mr. Hale, she whispered, thinking I was still under. Some people come back. You just keep holding on. Her kindness felt like the first real thing in months. That night I moved my left finger. Just a twitch, but mine. I tried again, harder. My body trembled. The machines blinked. It took hours, but by dawn, I could flex 2 fingers. I stared at them like newborn things. They counted my days, my breaths, my worth. Let them count. I was learning to count back. The day they finally gave up on me was the day I started coming back to life. The morning I opened my eyes for real, the world looked blurred, as if time itself had changed shape while I was gone. Light hurt. Sound felt new. I blinked until everything stopped spinning. A nurse gasped, ran to call the doctor. Voices filled the room. Someone shouted for Daniel. He arrived with Melissa, faces arranged in practiced surprise. "Dad? Can you hear me?" I nodded, slow and heavy. Every muscle felt carved from stone. My voice came out dry. "Yes." Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel looked like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't blame him. The doctor asked questions. I answered in fragments. Name, year, memory. He smiled. "That's good, Mr. Hale." "Very good." "You've beaten the odds," Daniel forced a laugh. "He always does." They hugged me, posed for a photo, promised to help me recover. But I saw it in their eyes, the discomfort of plans undone. They had already buried me in their minds. Days turned into a slow march of recovery. Nurses came and went. Therapists tested my legs, my speech, my mind. They told me not to strain myself. I obeyed outwardly. Inside, I stored every detail like ammunition. Daniel started visiting less. Melissa always came with him, cheerful but watchful. "We'll take you home soon," she said one morning, adjusting my blanket. "You'll see how much we've cleaned up for you." "Cleaned up?" I asked, voice cracking. She smiled. "Oh, just the clutter. You had so many old things I wanted to ask which things, but I needed patience." I nodded instead. Helen visited too. She cried when she saw me sitting up. "You scared us all, Tommy." "I scared myself," I said. She leaned close, whispering, "Daniel's been making decisions for you. Be careful." "He's changed." I met her eyes. "I haven't." She squeezed my hand. "Then stay that way." When I was strong enough to stand with help, Daniel came to sign discharge papers. "We'll handle everything at the house," he said. "You just focus on getting better." I looked at him, steady. "I will." He didn't notice the weight of the words. At home the air felt wrong. Rooms echoed where furniture used to be. Melissa saw me looking. "We sold a few things. You won't need them now." I said nothing. That night, in my bed, I listened to their laughter downstairs. They spoke freely again, thinking the weak old man upstairs couldn't hear. But I heard every word. "He's confused," Melissa said. "He won't notice what's gone." Daniel's voice. "We just have to get the papers signed. After that, it's all official." I stared at the ceiling and smiled, faintly. They were counting again, money, time, patience. That was exactly the moment I was done. In those first days back, I felt like a guest in my own home. The air smelled of new paint and lemon cleaner. The walls looked bare, scrubbed of memory. The workshop was locked. My name was still on the mailbox, but everything inside felt borrowed. That first night I sat in my recliner staring at the blank space where my wife's photo had hung. They'd taken her portrait, though the old family photo on the sideboard was somehow spared. I printed a new copy and put her back on the wall. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about erasure. I had died once, quietly, in a hospital bed. They thought that was the end of me. But standing in that hollow house, I came back for real. Something in me hardened. The same stubbornness that built every beam in that place woke up again. I decided I would not lose what I had earned. Not to them, not like this. At breakfast, Melissa served coffee and smiled. "You should rest more. Daniel and I will handle the heavy things." "I can handle a hammer," I said. She laughed too quickly. Of course. But we already cleared out the old tools. They were rusting. My workshop was climate-controlled, every tool oiled twice a year. My wife's ring was gone from her jewelry box, too. When I asked about it, Melissa said, "It didn't fit me. I had it resized so it wouldn't be wasted." The words hit like cold air. "It wasn't waste," I said. Her smile faltered. "You don't need to be upset, Dad. It's just a ring." I stared at her. "No, it was a promise." Daniel stepped in, voice tired. "Let's not do this, okay?" "It's been a rough year for all of us." He placed a hand on my shoulder, like a peacekeeper, but his eyes were calculating. I recognized that look. It was the same one he used when he was a boy trying to hide a lie. "Sure," I said. "Let's not do this." That night, I sat in the workshop's doorway. The padlock was new. I ran my hand across it and smiled. "We'll see," I muttered. Next afternoon, when they were out, I took a hacksaw from the basement and cut their padlock. I hung my old brass lock back on the hasp and oiled the hinge. The spare under the step turned like it always had. The inside was nearly empty. The workbench was stripped, but they had missed one thing, an old ledger in the bottom drawer. I used to record every expense, every property tax, every repair. I flipped through the pages. Dates, receipts, proof. If they wanted to play business, I would play it better. That night, I lay awake, planning. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns out. What I felt now was purpose. The next week, I called my lawyer, Mr. Barrett. He had handled my estate for 30 years. He met me at the diner by the river. When he saw me walk in, he looked surprised. "Tom, I didn't think you'd be up and about so soon." "Neither did they," I said. We sat by the window. I ordered black coffee, no sugar. I told him what happened during my coma. The signatures, the missing tools, the ring, the way Daniel spoke like the house already belonged to him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took a folder from his briefcase. "You should know something, Tom. While you were hospitalized, your son filed for temporary financial guardianship. Said it was to cover medical costs. Did I approve it? He used a power of attorney form signed in your name." "It's legitimate on paper," I nodded. "That's the paper they pushed under my hand." Barrett's jaw tightened. "I can file to revoke it, but we'll need clear documentation. Bank statements, title transfers, anything that changed while you were under." "I have my ledgers," I said, "and I remember their voices." Every word. He gave a slow smile. "Memory's good, but paper's better." He handed me a new folder. "Sign these. They restore authority to you, quietly. We won't file it until we're ready." I signed, each stroke steady. "How long until we can move?" "As soon as we have evidence they misused your funds or sold assets without consent." I nodded. "We'll have it." When I left the diner, the wind felt colder, but my spine was straighter. At home, Daniel asked where I'd gone. "Out for air," I said. He frowned. "You should let us know when you leave." I didn't realize I needed permission in my own house. Melissa stepped in, pretending to soothe. "He just worries, Dad." "I'll manage." She glanced at Daniel. Something silent passed between them. I caught it. They weren't worried about my health. They were worried I was thinking again. That night, I gathered mail from the last months. Bank statements, property assessments, insurance summaries. Half were unopened. I saw transfers I hadn't approved. New accounts. His name beside mine. I laid them out on the kitchen table, one by one. Proof was starting to form. I did not want a fight at the table. I wanted a measurement. Greed has a sound. It always shows itself when you open the door a crack. I picked a quiet night. Roast chicken. Soft music from Melissa's phone. I held my fork like a gavel and spoke as if I had only just thought of it. "I've been thinking about updating my will." Melissa's smile stalled. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "That's smart, Dad," he said. "I already spoke with Barrett," I said. He cleared his throat. "I can help with the accounts." "I know how to sign my name," I said. 4 lines. Enough. Their faces said the rest. I did the dishes slowly. My hands remember work. My ears remember whispers. When I went upstairs, I left the door open a finger's width. The vent in the hall carried their voices just enough to read the shape of them. I did not need every word now. I needed pressure points. They had them all over. They were worried about timing. They were worried about me changing something big without them. They were worried I had found the end of their rope. "Soon," he said once. She repeated it. That was the word I wanted. The next morning I left early. I told them doctor. I meant bank. Barrett had my box reactivated the day before. Box 214. Old key on the brass ring I kept in my sock drawer. The clerk checked my ID twice. Good. People should check. Inside the box I had order, duplicates of deeds, titles, the life insurance file with original signatures, a list of tool receipts from the year I retired, my late wife's letter about the house. I scanned with the bank copier, 1 set for Barrett, 1 set for me. I dated every sheet in ink. I wrote where the original lived. I put the copies in a manila envelope and pressed the clasp down hard. On the way home, I stopped at the notary. I had my signature affirmed on an affidavit of memory. That is a simple document. My statement that I was under sedation when they placed a pen in my hand. It is not proof by itself. It is a spine for proof to fasten to. Back in the driveway, Daniel paced like a landlord, counting seconds. He asked me where I had been. I gave him my doctor answer again. I did not elaborate. He did not deserve the details yet. Details are leverage. Leverage should be earned. My mind ran checklists. Bank statements, flagged. Transfers, noted. Power of attorney, reviewed for dates, witnesses, notary seal. Guardianship petition. I would request a copy from the court clerk to see the claims he made. That would tell me which door he used. I would close that door from the inside. Upstairs, I laid out my copies on the bed and built a timeline I could point to. When, what, who. A straight line of facts is harder to kick over. I was not getting ready to shout. I was getting ready to file. They had taught me what mattered by stealing what mattered. The ring, the tools, the voice in my house that tried to sound like love but kept counting. They thought I was testing their patience. I was testing their greed. I picked a recorder I trusted. Small, 8 gigabytes, a fresh battery that would run all night. I tested it in my room first, set the mic sensitivity to high, ran a minute of my own voice from the doorway, and played it back. Clear. The vent carried sound like a pipe. Good. Downstairs, a family photo still sat on the sideboard. My wife's hair in a soft curl, my arm around her shoulder, Daniel grinning like the boy he once was. Melissa had missed that frame. I slid the recorder behind it, angled toward the couch. I pressed record and checked the red light twice. Then I went upstairs with my cane and a slow, noisy step. I wanted them to hear me leave. For an hour, the house was just television noise and glasses on coasters. Then their voices turned to business. I wrote the time down on a notepad. We need him to sign, and soon. We'll tell him it's for protection. After we have it, we move him out. Sell before winter. The money goes through the medical account first. He won't fight. 6 lines. They were enough to carry the weight of all the others. I laughed. Every plan, every deadline they set for my life. I did not rage. I studied. Who called the shots? Who gave the nod? Who named the cover story? I imagined the pleading they would practice later and the way it would all fall apart when the first file played. Near midnight I rose, quiet on the old flooring I knew by heart. In the living room, the TV flickered against empty walls and the couch sagged with their sleep. I slipped the recorder out, checked the time code, and went back upstairs without a sound. I plugged it into my computer and copied the file twice. One to the desktop, one to a flash drive I kept on my keychain. I labeled both with the date and time. I listened with headphones, eyes closed, not for the sake of pain but for clarity. Their words were full. No gaps, no mercy for me in them. Good. Mercy would come later, but not from me. I wrote a short summary for Barrett on a yellow legal pad. Location of device, start and stop times, names present, main statements, exhibits attached. I slid the flash drive into his folder. I added the affidavit. I added copies of the bank transfers with arrows to the dates that matched the weeks they came home from the hospital and talked about help. By next noon, the envelope for Barrett was sealed, heavy with the kind of truth that does not argue. I set it by the door with my jacket. I felt steady. Control is quiet when it is real. I only needed to wait for them to make even more mistakes. They brought the papers 2 weeks later. Melissa carried the folder like a trophy. Daniel set it down in front of me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, this is just a protection form," he said. "Makes things easier if something happens again." I looked at the pages. Typed names, neat lines, blank spots for signatures. I could tell they hadn't expected me to read them. "Of course," I said. "I trust you." Melissa smiled in relief. "That means a lot, Dad." I signed, slow, careful, 1 page at a time. What they didn't know was that Barrett had prepared copies for me, identical except for one crucial difference. The ones they thought I signed stayed with them. The real set, notarized and dated a day earlier, stayed with me. Barrett had the revocation and restoration already notarized and ready to file, so the stack they carried home was a dead copy. Mine was the one with teeth. After they left, I replaced the folder on my desk, switched their stack for mine, and sealed it with their initials. Clean, simple, final. For the first time in months, I felt like the one setting the game, and that felt good. That night, I sat on the porch watching headlights move past the street. My hands shook, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to finish. I wasn't taking revenge anymore. I was restoring order. I met my lawyer the next morning at his office. He handed me a small envelope. Confirmation of control restored, accounts reverted, the property back under my sole authority. No speeches, just signatures. Walking home, the air felt clearer. The world looked sharper. When I stepped through the door, Daniel was on the phone. Melissa stood behind him, tense. He hung up fast. "Who was that?" I asked. "Bank," he said. "They said there was a mix-up." I smiled. "That's right." He frowned. "What did you do?" "Fixed it." He opened his mouth, then shut it. He knew something had shifted. I made tea, slow and calm. "You always like to play with matches, son." I just moved the fire. That night, I slept without the recorder for the first time. I didn't need it anymore. The power they borrowed was back in my hands, and they knew it. I felt the relief. My life started restoring itself. I chose a Sunday for a reason. Sundays used to mean something in this house. Family breakfast, my wife humming in the kitchen, Daniel helping me fix whatever broke that week. It used to be the one day when the noise of the world stayed outside. This Sunday, I wanted the noise to stay in. I planned this day to be our final confrontation. I called them both that morning. My voice was calm, polite, too even for Daniel's liking. "Come by at 4, I said. "There's something I'd like to talk about." He hesitated before answering. "Is it serious?" "Yes," I said. "It's time." When the clock reached 4, I had already set the stage. The kitchen was spotless, the table cleared except for a single envelope and the small recorder I had used weeks ago. The afternoon light came through the window in long, pale stripes that cut across the floor. It was the kind of light that made you see dust if you looked closely enough. Melissa came first, smiling the way people do when they expect to win. She was dressed too nicely for a family talk. Daniel followed a minute later, pretending calm, but his fingers kept twitching against his thigh. They both smelled faintly of perfume and nervousness. "What's this about, Dad?" Daniel asked. "Closure," I said simply. They sat. I didn't. I wanted them looking up at me, not across. For a long moment no one spoke. The house was so quiet I could hear the tick of the old clock from the hallway. I reached for the recorder and pressed play. At first the room filled with static, then with their voices, clear, sharp, casual in a way that only cruelty can be. Melissa's laugh echoed off the tiles. "Once he signs it, we'll move him somewhere smaller. He'll thank us later." Then Daniel's voice, calm and practical. "Sell before winter. Say it's for his medical costs." The sound of clinking glasses followed. Melissa flinched. Daniel stared at the table. I let the recording play until the last word faded into silence. When it stopped, I didn't speak right away. I wanted the quiet to finish what the audio had started. Melissa was the first to crack. "That's not fair," she whispered. "You don't understand the pressure we were under." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You were planning my funeral while I was still breathing." Daniel looked up, his face pale. "Dad, it wasn't like that. We were scared. You were gone." "I was there," I said, voice steady. "I heard every word. You were counting my days, Daniel, counting my money. You called it practicality. I call it greed." He swallowed hard, trying to rebuild his calm. "We only wanted to make sure you were taken care of." "By stealing what I built?" He said nothing. Melissa wiped her eyes, but no tears came. I pulled the envelope from the table and slid it toward them. "Inside are the papers I filed last week. The house title is back in my name. Every account has been secured. What's in your name is gone. You'll get nothing further from me. No power, no access, no inheritance." Melissa stared at it like it was a trap ready to spring. "You wouldn't—" "I already did." Daniel's jaw clenched. He looked at the envelope, then at me. "So that's it? You're cutting us off?" "No," I said. "You cut yourselves off when you chose money over blood." The clock ticked. A car passed outside. The refrigerator hummed and clicked. Every sound in the house seemed louder because none of them could fill the silence between us. I walked to the window, looking out over the yard. The oak tree still stood there, the one Daniel and I planted when he was 10. Its roots had cracked the walkway years ago. He used to climb it every summer until he grew too old, too proud. Now it stood tall and unbothered by what happened beneath it. I turned back to them. "You know, I thought the accident took everything from me. Turns out it just peeled away." What didn't matter? Daniel's voice broke the quiet again, low and trembling. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said. "I mean every word." He looked at me the way he used to when he was a child caught in a lie, defiant, frightened, desperate for someone else to blame. But this time, there was no one else left. Melissa reached out a hand, the same way she had in the hospital when she thought I couldn't hear. "Please, Tom. We can fix this. You already did enough fixing." I pointed toward the front door. "Now it's time to go." For a moment, they didn't move. Then Daniel stood, shoulders hunched. He took the envelope, not to read it, but to have something to hold on to. Melissa followed, silent, eyes down. At the door, he turned once. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "No," I answered. "You will." He looked like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. They stepped outside. The door closed softly behind them. I stayed still, listening. First, the footsteps on the porch, then the car doors, then the engine starting. Finally, the sound faded down the street, leaving only the creak of the old floor under my feet and the distant rustle of the oak outside. The house felt empty again, but not hollow. The quiet had changed. It belonged to me now. I stood at the table, staring at the space where the envelope had been. My hands were steady. My breath was steady. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't at peace either. Not yet. The fight was over, but the weight of it still pressed on my chest. They would try to talk their way around it, maybe even find someone to pity them. Let them. I had the truth, and truth, once spoken, doesn't go back to sleep. By evening, the phone started ringing. First, a message from Daniel, short, angry, full of excuses. Then one from Melissa, softer, full of guilt she probably rehearsed. I deleted both. I didn't need their words anymore. I'd heard enough of them to last the rest of my life. The next morning, I packed their things myself. A few boxes, clothes, photos they never looked at, the leftover decorations they'd bought to make the house modern. I taped each box and left them on the porch. When the truck came to collect them, I didn't look out the window. Helen stopped by in the afternoon. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me and patted my hand. "You did what you had to, Tommy," she said quietly. "I didn't want to," I told her, "but I couldn't keep letting them walk through my life like it was a hallway." She nodded. Sometimes peace costs family. The word stayed with me after she left. That night I walked through every room, touching what was still mine. The oak table, the old clock, the workbench in the corner of the workshop where the smell of sawdust still lingered. My wife's photo was back on the wall. Her smile looked steadier than I remembered. I felt tired. Just tired. Tired in a good way, like after finishing something that needed doing. The next week, I went back to the hospital, the same one where I had spent a year listening to my family plan my disappearance. The walls were the same pale color, the smell the same. But I wasn't the same man. I asked to see the nurse who used to talk to me when I couldn't move. Her name was Claire. When she saw me standing there, her eyes widened. "Mr. Hale?" "You look good." "I am," I said. "Thanks to you." We sat in the small cafeteria. I told her I remembered every word she said when everyone else thought I was gone. She smiled, then frowned a little when she realized I meant it literally. I handed her a sealed envelope. "This is a donation," I said, "for the long-term care unit. Equipment, books, music, whatever helps people feel less alone." She looked surprised. "That's very generous." "It isn't generosity," I said. "It's balance. I want the ones still trapped in silence to be heard." Walking out of that hospital, I felt lighter. That place no longer held me hostage. It was where I had been reborn, and this was how I chose to close the door. Outside, the sky was clear. The wind carried that early spring smell, cold dirt and sunlight. I stood there a long while, breathing. The city moved around me, busy, uncaring, alive. For the first time in years, I matched its pace. I had spent a year lying in silence. Now I could finally give that silence a purpose. Summer came slowly that year. I rebuilt my porch plank by plank. My hands ached, but it was the kind of ache that meant life. I worked alone. The rhythm of hammer and nail steadied my thoughts. The wood creaked under my weight, familiar and forgiving. The world around me had shrunk to what I could hold, and that was enough. One afternoon, my grandson, Owen, rode his bike up the drive. He had stayed out of the mess, too young, too decent. He handed me a lemonade, cold from the gas station. "Dad says you're doing okay," he said. "I am," I told him. "Better than okay." He sat with me for a while. We didn't talk much. Sometimes quiet is the best kind of conversation. Before leaving, he said, "Mom and Dad don't come around anymore." I nodded. Some people have to get lost before they find the right road again. He looked at me for a long second. "You're not mad?" No, I said. Madness is heavy. I'm done carrying it. When he rode away, I stayed there listening to the creak of the porch swing, the sound of crickets starting up in the grass. The house behind me was still, steady, mine. Inside, my wife's photo caught the sunset through the window. I looked at it and smiled. "We're all right now," I whispered. I didn't have much family left who would visit, but that didn't bother me. What mattered was that I hadn't surrendered to the lies, or to the silence they'd tried to bury me in. I had my home, my name, my peace. When night came, I turned off the porch light and sat there in the dark, feeling the boards under my feet and the cool air on my face. I could hear the distant hum of cars, the slow rhythm of the world going on. I was where I belonged. Do you think my son was scared or greedy at heart? And does the difference matter? Where do you draw the line with family who call theft practical? Share your thoughts in the comments.
My grandpa's worst really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.